The FIFA Club World Cup has entered the knockout stages officially. We are hitting the round of 16. And out of the North American region, out of the CONCACAF area, right, if you will, globally, two teams have advanced. One from Liga MX and one from MLS. Today, we are here to preview the sole MLS team and their upcoming round of 16 match against defending European champions PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, coming off of a historic treble season. For this special episode of Wake Up MLS, I wanted to make sure I got in here the expert, at least when it comes to my personal circle, around PSG, around this club. He comes from the club internally. His academy days are there. And now he's here supporting MLS, and I'm sure he feels a little bit torn, but at the end of the day, he's going to support his boys. Musa, welcome back in, man. How you doing?
I'm good. Finally, PSG's getting a little bit of respect. So I'm good with that.
Yes, man. Yes. It's been a long time coming. I can only imagine how you felt. Not just winning Champions League, but of course, doing it in epic fashion, bro. I mean, that Inter team was, you guys basically sneezed and moved them aside. It was pretty simple. What's crazy is that I don't know if this game against Inter Miami will be that straightforward. A 5-0 drubbing could easily be that with how powerful PSG are and how young they are, right? In this crazy hot summer America is experiencing right now. But look, man, it's going to be a game everybody will pay attention to. A lot of interesting storylines. The Barca boys of Miami going up against their former manager, former teammates, especially from the side of Lionel Messi. This is a weird one, bro. This is like a really weird one. Personally, I would have preferred to see it a little bit deeper into the tournament. Like if there was a world where Miami progresses beyond the round of 16, seeing this like the quarterfinal, there's no way Miami makes a semifinal, so I'll leave it there. But this would have been, either way, it would have been a crazy game, a little bit deeper, but still a juicy matchup. Let's talk about some of those storylines that I just mentioned, man. And I also want to layer on top of this, right? For those who, again, aren't super familiar, if you're just kind of jumping into some of that dynamic between these two sides at this point of the year, Messi did have a time at PSG, right? Had a 3-year contract there after he left Barca before moving to Inter Miami. Hakimi's a former teammate of his. Dembele is a former teammate of his from his days at Barca. Luis Enrique, his former manager, the manager he won a treble under. It's a really interesting dynamic, this game. Youth versus experience. How are you really kind of just, again, putting the fandom aside, Musa, for just a second, when you think about this game, and it is just one game, old heads versus new, how do you see it play out in your head mentally when you think about who comes out on top?
And I think that's one of those interesting ways where PSG is coming off of a hot season. You have the younger guys, as we all know, usually experience will probably beat youthness. But from what we've seen now these days is that PSG's youthness is what is made them so well. So the biggest storyline, and I think what people have to kind of also see is that not only, it's Inter versus PSG, but there's so much of that history that is beyond just the two clubs playing together. Yeah. And as you can see, there's a multi-winner Ballon d'Or, but Rafinha he's also one guy that they are talking about. He's also on the list for the Ballon d'Or, and he's been playing awfully well himself. So there's so much layers than just what's happening on the field. So hopefully, the MLS fans will kind of learn a little bit more about the history of what those players all across from Inter and PSG represent when it comes to old Barca with new, younger Barca, we'll say, and guys that, play before, play after, and some of the players that, some of the PSG younger players actually grew up watching some of the Barca guys, especially Neymar, to model their style of play.
Yeah.
And now you have your coach that is a Barca guy. So that web of connection is beyond just those 6 guys.
Yeah, I agree. I wholeheartedly agree. I think it's not even just youth versus experience for me. It's also kind of what you just alluded to with how different, or even just that saying you just mentioned, it's beyond those 6-7 guys that we just talked about. Like the makeup of each team, right? While PSG are a powerhouse through and through on paper, significantly better than this team, do they lack experience? Sure. But there's so much vibrant youth with high technical ability in this side that Luis Enrique and PSG have put together. It does feel reminiscent, right, of like Barca's 2015, 2016 team. I still think that team had significantly more firepower, but they were also all completely in their prime. Right. Like that's something that most fans don't ever talk about when they make that comparison. I'm a Barca fan myself. So I think Luis Enrique has done something similar with a much younger side. And for that reason, you can be a little bit nervous for PSG going up against the likes of Messi in a knockout game. And we all saw what Luis Suárez did. Is there a chance that Messi outclasses this youthful PSG side? And what I mean by that is I don't think Miami is going to set up in a way where they want to go toe-to-toe with PSG. I think they're going to find a way to just pick their moments. And when they do, let some of that, veteran patience and ability shine through when the time comes. But I don't think they're going to be sitting there like chomping at the bit waiting to go at PSG. I think they're going to let them have most of the possession. And I think there's going to be a moment where Messi gets a free kick or just a standard set piece opportunity to take advantage of. There's some of that hangs here. And that's what I think PSG fans should be slightly wary of. Do you worry about that at all from Miami's perspective?
Just a little bit, because Messi alone, you cannot just outright him outright. Yeah. And he'll probably will be missing for a lot of that game. So that's where we all know what he does at the end of the day. But I think for me, it's like the matchup of, okay, so there's Messi, you cross him out, then who else will be able to keep up? Yes, Suárez is there, but we're talking a guy that will need a few shots before he can play. And PSG will be able to keep up with those for those 90 minutes. Can they outrun those guys is the question. And if you give PSG that much possession, what are we going to say that you give them that much? Well, they're going to score 5 goals. We all know Miami still has a sketchy defense. Now you're talking about 5 or 6 offensive players, young, that are hungry, that are able to put 5 in Inter and 4 against Atletico Madrid. What doesn't tell us that they might not be able to do the same thing if Miami defense falls asleep.
Yeah. No, that's fair. That's fair. I think the back line, bro, has been, anybody who's watched Major League Soccer this season, has paid attention to Miami in general, has known that their back line, even last year, really wasn't that great. Had enough depth in the team to like make it work. They were just so potent offensively that it just didn't really matter, right? When they set that point record total for the Supporter Shield in 2024. This year, though, completely different story. And I will say, not only are they just as shambolic, they might actually be worse. And they're not firing at the same rate that they were last season, which kind of poses for this very, I don't know, interesting, I guess you could say, Miami side where they're probably going to get into playoffs, but at the end of the day, they really haven't been anywhere impressive enough to say that they're like a contender in the East, much less a contender in the FIFA Club World Cup. But here we are, and they're playing each other. And I think that, I don't know, for me, when you look at the game that should give Miami inspiration, the one that they'll be looking at, watching tape on, trying to figure out where they actually can pick apart in moments, this PSG side, obviously everyone was dragging not just PSG, but Europe when Botafogo stunned them. And I will say stunned because I don't think anybody saw that coming. PSG didn't see that coming. It happens. It's a big tournament. No matter what, doesn't change how they got in, but it's a one-off game. We saw it in the World Cup. Happened to Messi in Argentina, right? Mm-hmm. Lost to Saudi Arabia. It happens in these tournaments. But nonetheless, it kind of posed this interesting narrative around the European fall-off is what I'm calling it, right? How they're washed, how maybe they started the offseason too early. The defending European champions, they're so hyped up by Europeans, and yet they come to a tournament this big and we're seeing exits all over the place, along with the current reigning European champions being upset. How do you read that? Is European dominance cracking? Are European club teams are they overhyped? Are they not as strong as the rest of the world seems to think they are?
So that's the tricky part. So as a European, I guess we'll say, right? I think it was overhyped for too much. But
Okay.
I think one thing that kind of highlighted the most is that a lot of the people that were saying that, it's because of lack of understanding of knowing of what the other leagues were about first.
Mm,
So if they were all about the European, right? Everybody's thinking, oh, the Champions League, oh, this and that, and they watch the top 5 teams in Europe come and do not perform as well as they know. Let's not forget they did travel across the pond, right? So and they played, and yes, it could sounds like excuses, but there's also valid excuses, right? But also at the same time, where was the last time a European country team won the Club World Cup? Was it what, 2012 or something? So if you look at that history there, you know there's a difference.
hmm.
If you've never watched Brazilian league, if you never watched Argentinian league, if you never watched Mexican league, and then all of a sudden you see, oh, Botafogo, oh, you see, there's that spectrum that they think because it's Chelsea, before because it's Arsenal, because it's whoever in Europe, that they're supposed to be better than everybody else. But they also forget that there's a pride when someone plays against someone else that says,
Yep.
hey, you're playing against Chelsea, so they're technically supposed to beat you. But guess what? Your pride, now you're not only playing for your club, but now you're also playing for your country. I would take someone that's playing for pride in country before someone that's playing for just because they think they're better already. So I was a little bit surprised that Botafogo won, yes. But also at the same time, isn't it their striker now is going to Nottingham, was already signed to go to England? I think two of them from that team were already signed to go to Nottingham, and there's two others from other teams that are already signed to go to Europe. So those are not new guys that no one is aware of.
Yeah.
It's just that they have not to be within European team. So I think it's two things. One, people not knowing what the other leagues are, and then they're surprised because someone wins.
Yeah, I agree with all that. But I think to go a step further here, I would also say that, bro, it's the dumbest argument in the world because when in the history of this sport, at least I'm talking in the last half century, maybe, right? Have we ever doubted that the European region ever? When have we ever looked at the Champions League winner and thought, yeah, they're not that good. They're really not that good, right? We in fact, in especially in modern football history, there's just so many instances where we look at the Champions League champion as the eventual Club World Cup winner. That's just how it's going to work. It almost always works out that way. It doesn't matter who they play. That just seems to be how it always goes. And now it's just an interesting time. And again, maybe it's a scenario where the fans, especially here in America, are just fed up because you know as well as I do, right? It's always MLS versus Euro snobs,
Right.
or just even American soccer versus Euro snobs, and each one thinks the other one is worse, or they think they're themselves are better. I don't know. It's just a really weird dynamic. But I can't think of a time in recent memory though where the Champions League trophy winner wasn't treated as such. Like that's usually the kings of Europe are almost always the kings of the world. It tends to be how it works more often than not. And trust me, the European teams who don't go on to win the Club World Cup, they're ridiculed at least a little bit. Like they usually are. Like it's usually like almost a given. So with all of that in mind, it's like I don't know if this is disrespect towards PSG or if it's just a scenario where we've entered this rage baiting era of football that personally I can't stand. But at the end of the day, because no meaningful conversations are had at that point. But it's just interesting, man. As a PSG fan, I just wanted to see how you felt about that. I thought it was super interesting.
Yeah.
I do think that there is upset potential. Do not get me wrong, but it is not because the European reputation is cracking, right? It's simply because it's tournament football. I've seen crazier results in my lifetime. It's a one-off game. It's a one-off game, and the greatest player of all times on the other side of the pitch. That's all that I'm saying. And for that reason alone, there's some reason to believe. But
Yeah,
outside of that,
it's a tournament.
yeah, it's a tournament. It's
Yeah.
cup football, man. It happens everywhere. Happens everywhere.
Senegal beat France 1-0. Who would have thought that the champion of '98 would have lost against a team of
Bro,
not wanted players from that actually were French, but were not wanted by the national team, went with Senegal and then beat them. Who would have thought of that? Nobody. It's the beauty of the sports that we watch. It
yeah.
happened. Fraud alert, it isn't. I know our good friends from across saying it's fraud alert, but we just have to remember we thought Argentina was gone after losing against Saudi Arabia.
Yep.
And look what happened.
I agree. I totally agree. And so with that said, it now again talking about just this the fact that this is not a situation where it's PSG is part of this again, this European fall off. It's more a scenario of there could be some underdog momentum.
Yep.
And I think with Miami, right? I think that there's zero pressure on them. I think this is house money for them. Why? Because it's actually a lose-lose for PSG, right? If you win the game, it's kind of a loss because everyone's going to think, well, you should have been an MLS side anyway. So there you go. And if you lose, it's quite literally this is the European fall off. I can only imagine what the rage baiters on the timeline are going to post if PSG ends up somehow losing this game, whether it's an regular play or if it's like in a penalty shootout afterward. It's going to be really interesting to follow. We'll see how that part of it goes. Before we get closer to a prediction here, I'm kind of curious, man. There are some interesting 1v1 matchups, I think, in this game. This one to me, I mean, the one I want to highlight more than any of them, I'm kind of curious for your thoughts because in this day and age of their career, one's clearly better than the other, but it's still a fantastic matchup. How do you see Messi versus Hakimi going? I think to me, that's going to be very, very interesting to follow. It could be Nuno Mendes, depending on where Messi ends up lining up, but like, I do believe it'll end up by the end of the game being more Messi Hakimi.
It was in my notes pretty much. That's what I had it also, because I think it's almost fair to say that Hakimi is probably the best right back in the world, or he's getting close in the history itself. But that's the matchup that I want to see where he gets to go, because even though he's marked as a right back, he has the freedom to do almost anything he wants to, moving up and down or even the middle. So, but then the question then is, where is Suárez going to find? Is it then Suárez will find open spots where he can play himself? Because PSG had been a little iffy on defense as well. So I wonder who they will put as a CDM for PSG to kind of counter that. And that says Messi is your best friend for the whole game. Unfortunately, Hakimi cannot be Messi's best friend for the whole game, because that means you're taking some of your offensive opportunities off because you have to track.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where, and by the way, right, I see it the same way. I think Messi versus Hakimi is the matchup, right? And I think that they were formerly good friends at PSG. I think that they both have a massive respect for each other. I think that part you mentioned about Hakimi being the best right back in the world, he's probably this past season he definitely was. I think, and that's coming from someone who had the pleasure of watching Jules Koundé on his team all season long. Another great right back. But again, I think Hakimi does more going forward, and so he'll always get more of that credit. And it's probably the most offensive right back we've seen since like Dani Alves, to be fair. And I'll be honest, again, putting off the field stuff aside, like Dani Alves is probably the best right back I've ever watched in my life. I can't think of another one on top of my head. But with all of this said, I think this is a matchup. And I think Messi will find a way to float away from Nuno Mendes if that ends up becoming the matchup on table. I think not because Hakimi's an easier target. I think it's because Nuno's actually very physically strong. I think it's going to be hard to like beat him pace for pace. He actually tracks back a little bit better than Hakimi. Hakimi sometimes is so far forward, you need the left back to just hold back a little bit sometimes. Although Luis Enrique will throw everybody at the kitchen table, right? Like he'll completely throw the kitchen sink at anybody. But I do think that just over the course of the game, because we all know what Messi does, he starts to kind of float around, right, through his patient walking around the pitch when he's not, frankly, tracking back defensively. He's kind of just doing his thing, finding himself in spaces, and I think he'll end up finding himself in a 1v1 duel with Hakimi more often than not. I could be wrong about that. I think it'll be really interesting, man, because Messi picks and chooses his runs very well. Very well. And on a hot day, hot evening, it'll be very interesting to see if Hakimi ends up getting caught lacking a little bit, right? If he ends up being pushed up too high, Messi gets room to run down his flank. Who has to come and backtrack for him? You mentioned who the defensive mid will be. It could end up being like a Joao Neves, right? Like, I think it's someone who I would expect to try and be the guy that fills that gap, right? That kind of bridges that until Hakimi can track back. But I don't know. Vitinha might have more to do in this game.
I think he will have to, especially the way the V shape that they're playing, where he has a lot more of the midfield and almost all the way to center back.
Yeah.
So I think he might be one of those that has like almost the double pivot, where if he's not marking Messi, then he gets to move up. But I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't play the full game.
Yeah. Yeah, it's juggling minutes is going to be interesting too, and that's another thing that they'll have to kind of figure out. But I honestly can't wait to watch that matchup. The only other matchup I can really think of that's interesting is Donnarumma coming back and him facing set pieces. Because the one area of the pitch I will say that MLS sides do stack up with a decent amount of sides around the world on is the physical part of football.
Yeah.
And I would say that like on set pieces where I kind of give a team like Miami a chance, right? It's like, they can find a way to crowd the box. They can find a way to create room where they need to. And you never know what happens at that point. So, but Donnarumma is someone that I will pay attention to just because he's just now getting back. Dembele is just now getting back as well. We'll see if he ends up making either the starting lineup or the bench for this game. Again, bro, if it's me going into a brand new season, not sure if I'd risk it, but hey, I mean, it's the Club World Cup. It's a good amount of money. We'll see what happens on that front, bro. But look, just about towards the end of our preview here, Moose, I'm kind of curious, man. It's prediction time. Got to figure out who's going to win this bad boy. Look, man, I know everybody at home, I'm sure 90 to 99% of you guys are all in on PSG. I can totally see where you're coming from. But let's get a score line prediction in there as well. We'll see how close we are. I'm curious if you have a big runaway score, if you think it's going to be tight, and I'll give you mine, and we'll have one kind of bonus question towards the end. So actually, I'll give it to you now. So again, give us your prediction, Mo, and if PSG were to lose, what's the headline Monday morning?
3-0 PSG.
Okay. And if they were to lose, just in case they were to lose, what's the headline the next day?
There will be two headlines.
Yeah.
So one in the US is that the MLS is a top 5 league in the world. Inter Miami is going to win it all. Europe is a fraud. PSG is fraud. Campeones champ are better than the UCL.
Yeah.
And that and maybe people will start changing team. There says we no longer follow European, we'll have to follow Brazilian teams. And then in Europe, it will be one of those like, what the heck happened?
Yeah.
But then after that, it's going to be erased because now there's a new season. And then after that, all European teams says, hey, the World Cup is coming next year. So guess what? You can have the Club World Cup, but the World Cup is a different discussion.
Yeah, I agree, bro. I agree.
I think it's just too different. Where I kid you not, I think they will say MLS is a top 5 or top 3 league, and then PSG is a farmer league again.
I love Major League Soccer. I love it. I love it more than most people, and I there's no way that's not rage bait. Like, I know I feel like I overuse that word, but even anybody who follows me on Twitter knows that I complain about it. It's just we've entered this era where it's somehow cool to just piss people off with horrendous takes, and
it works.
Everybody's so easily triggered on the internet, so it actually works. It actually builds a following. But God, I know I sound boomer as hell. I'm just ready to go back to the time where like people were authentic with their opinions and their conversations. It's just it would make for.
I think it's fair, and it starts a good conversation.
Yeah,
because some people may have followed Europe maybe a little bit too much and kind of ignored the other side. So I think it kind of works for me, and I'm starting to enjoy it, right? And we see a lot of the African teams and all of the Asian teams now are getting more support from others because they saw that the clubs, not only the teams are performing, but the fans showed up at the same time, and that's a preview of what the World Cup is. So I think it helps as well, showing the rest of the world what that experience can be. And I
Mhm.
think a lot of naysayers of the Club World Cup when it first started, a lot of them came back and said we were wrong.
Yeah, that's fair enough, man. That's fair enough. I think, look, regardless of what the excuses are from last season, going into my prediction now, I do believe. Oh man, I'm gonna give Miami a little bit of credit. I'm gonna say it's 3-1, not 3-0. But I do see PSG running away with this. And I think that like it could be a scenario where they score a couple goals early, they sit and they kind of just like toy with Miami a little bit. Miami gets it'll feel like the 2015, 2016 Champions League final. Miami gets one, they think they're kind of right, back in it, a little bit of momentum, you never know. And then PSG closes the door. The last 10, 15, whatever it's going to be in the game. That's that. So that's how I see the game going. I see a 3-1 PSG. And I think the headline, if it were to flip and somehow Miami and Messi go on at the game of their lives, they force PKs and they win, dude, the headline is straight up going to be frauds.
Yep.
One word, exclamation point. That's it. Like that's literally going to be it. I feel like there are certain teams, fan bases, not just here but around Europe in general, that want PSG to lose.
Oh,
That that just and that's true of all big clubs. Don't get me wrong, but I think up until this point, I think it's different for PSG because they're state owned, and they have backing that other clubs just don't have. And whether it's like when City won it for the first time. I can't think of many fans that I know that had too many good things to say about that team winning it. It just kind of like, yeah, they're the best team. So what? Like, it kind of just shrugged it off. And it feels that way with PSG a little bit. Like they don't like fans don't want to give them the credit. So I feel like, again, it'd be different had, I don't know, if Chelsea were to lose to Inter Miami, it would not be the same catastrophic failure headlines as I feel it would be with PSG.
Yeah, you're the
So
current champ. I mean, I
yeah,
think that's what comes with it. But I'm still surprised at how much hatred PSG gets. It's like it just showed up to a lot of people's radar to begin with. I'm like, a lot of people didn't even know when I told them what PSG was. They were like, from where? I'm like, after El Clasico, La Classique is one of the biggest biggest game in Europe against Marseille.
yeah.
But it's only when the money came in that people start paying attention. So I'm just glad that people get to know more of those teams and get to learn that it's not just Europe.
Yeah. I agree, man. I agree. Well, look, either way, man, again, Musa, I appreciate it so much, man. Thanks for coming on today, doing the preview with me. And guys, look, I'm going to link everything, Musa and Mo Football down below. Go check him out. Go follow his channels. He talks a lot about the game. And look, man, I think more than anything else, he's a PSG fan. I'm an MLS fan. I'm going to enter Miami kid on today because I love Messi. He is my GOAT, forever my GOAT. Exactly, bro. Exactly. But at the end of the day, man, it's just I really want to see a good game. That's all I care about this weekend, seeing a really good game. Let's just see what happens. But again, man, I really appreciate it, Mo. Guys, if you enjoyed this content, if you enjoy content around MLS in general, again, like the video down below, subscribe to Goals TV. We're doing really well right now. It's gonna be a big summer for the channel. Again, right, if you guys want to stay not just tuned into everything Major League Soccer, but everything North American soccer, this is definitely the channel for you. All right. So for everybody here, Wake Up MLS, my name is Jose. That's Musa. We'll catch you guys next time.